extremely limited. I think most of them, they made 1,000, some of them even less in the beginning. The first ones, like Cohiba, Partagas, those were very limited. Two, I say that because all of the Habanos collection releases were big ring gauge cigars. Ring gauges that were generally never used except for maybe in Salomon sizes or Perfectos, giant Perfecto sizes for Cuban cigars, for Habanos. 56s. The O'Reilly was a 56. That's the biggest San Cristobal cigar there is. And in many of the other brands, the ring gauge was 56. Cuban cigars were never that big before, ever. And over the years, they started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But anyway, long story short, he bought all these Habanos books. He bought all these Habanos books, spent a ton of fucking money on them. They look beautiful in his humidor. He has a big cabinet. It looks like a book collection. It's crazy. And then they come out with the one in 2011 that has 3 of every single one they released. I don't think I've ever seen anybody so pissed off about something cigar related in my life. He just couldn't stop talking about it. He was fuming. And I felt for him because it's fucked up. You know, he spent all this money. These cigars are super ultra rare. If you wanted these cigars, you're going to spend a lot of money for one of these books. Some of the earlier ones, while he was still collecting the later ones, were already auctioning off for like $4,000. Then they come out with a box of all of them. 3 cigars a piece. So you could still smoke one of each, experience it, and have 2 left. Or just keep the whole thing, not smoke any. I don't know how you can do that. You know, but wow. Anyway, there's another story for how they fuck you in the end. Collect, 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 and fuck you in the end. So be careful, you know. Another reason I like jars. For the most part, in the beginning anyway, they were releasing things like La Gloria Cabana, Boulevard China that you couldn't get anywhere else. Then they kind of started fucking around with the Alamania jars, where they had 600 jars, but they also had 1,000 boxes. You know, and then they started releasing a lot of jars with sizes that you could get anywhere and just refill the fucking jar. It's all different. But the Torreon is a size that's unavailable anywhere else. We'll see how long that lasts. Alright, so we'll talk quickly about our first third. Basically, I said everything there is. Very nice pre-draw. Like I said, not really intense, but not really subtle. Somewhere right in the middle. Flavors of honey, graham, etc. But on the light, all of that seemed to go away. And there was a very pronounced sour note that flew solo, so to speak, by itself for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 pulls. There was also a lot of spice on the light. But then those honey, graham flavors started coming back and the cigar started to acquire more depth. There was a very deep, weedy, bassy type of almost vegetal bean flavor. You had hints of honey, hints of spice, and now that bean flavor seems to have primarily taken over. There is a subtle gramminess to the cigar. There are still tiny little bits of spice, but for the most part, it's a very smooth, wispy, light-hearted cigar. I'll put it that way. But it's got a nice flavor to it. It does. And it's not like I'm not feeling anything. It's acquiring some strength. And that definitely, you know, through the first third, acquired depth. And now that depth is starting to level out, pull after pull. And I'm getting a lot of bean flavors, graham, little bits of honey here and there, some grassiness, some youth to it. Pretty good. Through the nose, it's very perfumey. I'm not even saying floral because there are some odd type perfumey notes that are really undetectable unless you put it through the nose. There's also a bit of ammonia, so you can tell there's some youth to this cigar, which obviously we know there is. So that's our first third. We're going to keep smoking it, and let's see what else we got here. As I was saying before we got into the little book story tangent, other special releases include the O'Reilly, which was the cigar made for the 9th release of the Habanos Collection series, Cuban books. It's interesting to note that at a 56 ring gauge, this was the widest San Cristobal made thus far. Then comes the final release, bringing us up to date. And we'll talk about that in a second, the Torreon. I just want to note that O'Reilly, I can't find proof of this at the moment, anybody else who knows what they're talking about that says it, but I believe that the O'Reilly was named after Alexander O'Reilly, who was an Irish general who liberated Cuba from British occupation during the 7 Years' War. There is also an O'Reilly Street, Cal O'Reilly, in Havana, named after the same man. So, why else would the cigar be called the O'Reilly? That's gotta be it. Now, our most recent release, the Torreon. Like every other San Cristobal cigar so far, it is named for something that means something based on old Havana. You know, you have your forts, your old streets, your Irish generals liberating the place. The Torreon. Cool name. It's really a cool name. And it causes the whole jar to make sense when you realize that it translates to tower. Okay? More exactly, a Torreon is defined as a great tower in fortifications built for defense. This falls in line with the naming of the original vitolas, as I just said. Even cooler is how the jar holding the cigars forms the shape of a Torreon or tower, defense tower, once the ashtray is put on top, with the walls and spaces that would be for cannons or guns, anybody, you know, shooting down on whoever's trying to come in. So, the Torreon tower, and then the jar makes sense. I think that's really cool. It's really cool. And to see exactly how this jar works or is assembled, please do go see the Cigar Collectibles episode where we have the whole thing taken apart, and it's very interesting. It's actually more than you might think. You know, there's some cool stuff under that ashtray there. So the Torreon size is only available in this jar, which is truly a special release. And now we're going to talk about why the Torreon jar is such a special release, especially for us collectors. This cigar is starting to get really nice now. The depth stopped increasing, but now sharp notes are starting to increase. I'm starting to get a real twang right now, and some spices even coming back. Have a good half a cigar left, so I'm glad to see that. Some really nice flavors starting to develop even more. The draw is also really evening out. The burn is dead even right now, and I'm getting some really good pulls. So far, I have a cigar that I really do like. Before I get into the jar, I want to make one little comment, one little side note. This is an kind of an LCDH release. We're going to talk about that. There are Torreon cigars, I don't know if they're out there or which ones came first or last. According to Cuban Cigar website, the Torreon jars were released with secondary La Casa del Habano bands. Everybody knows what those look like, the red bands, right? They even have a picture of the jar on the website with cigars with those bands. However, if you go to a ton of other websites where they're selling the Torreon jar, they don't have bands. Few do, most don't. I've even been to a few websites where the knob on the top of the Torreon jar is totally different than what's under here. This knob is a gold ball. I've seen a picture, and I think you might be able to see. You know what? I'll put it on here right now. Let's take a look at this. Why is it a special release? It is the first release made specifically for the prestigious Habanos Specialty Shops that have been popping up all over the place over the span of the last, I don't know, 7 years or so. Some of you may be asking, actually it's been more like a decade, some of you may be asking, well, what are these exactly? How are they different from a standard La Casa del Habano shop? Here's the story behind that. Back in 2004, Fifth Avenue, the distributor outfit, here's the story behind that. Back in 2004, here's the story behind that. Back in 2004, the distribution outfit, Fifth Avenue, who is in charge of all Habanos distributed throughout Germany, came up with a plan called the Habanos Expert Project. The basics called for an award to be given to Habanos shops that exhibited qualities above and beyond the standards one would expect from such retailers, or lounges, or what they're calling divans. So what qualities are we talking about? Well, the shops are scored on a number of points, which could be pretty much anything involving cigars or retailing cigars. What the exact qualities are aren't really known, but I have a few that I wrote here. Specialty cigars in stock, size of inventory, the quality regarding how the cigars are stored, atmosphere, overall presentation of products, customer service, lounge environment, and so on and so forth. So they go to the shop and they rate all this thing, and then they say, okay, we're giving you this award, and then they become what is known as a Habanos Specialty Shop. To date, approximately 70 shops have been granted this award over the last 10 years. So they're giving out approximately 10 awards a year. The plan, of course, is not just to award shops that are already outstanding, but rather to make shops that could do better strive for this award. In short, it's another attempt to boost the image of Habanos around the world. This time by getting stores carrying Habanos products to shape up. Fuck you. In short, it's another attempt to boost the image of Habanos around the world, this time by getting stores carrying Habanos products to shape up. But an award is sometimes not enough. Profit is always a great inspiration, and nothing makes more profit in a Habanos shop than a special release available nowhere else. So, in 2012, it was announced that this would be a special release to commemorate the Habanos Specialty Shops that would be available in these shops only. I knew about the release as soon as it was around, so it was sheer angst awaiting it to be available, which wasn't until 2013. But the wait was well worth it, as this is one beautiful jar packed with some outstanding looking cigars. And from what I'm tasting here, very, very good cigars. They really are. Getting spicy again. And to think that these are like technically in their sick period. They taste great right now. They really do. I mean, they need time to become what they can be. But they're definitely smokable. You know? Definitely smokable. I might have to give a little touch up to the bottom of this wrapper. So to make matters more interesting still, especially for us collectors, it is now being said that this is the first release in what is to be a series of Habanos Specialty Shop releases. So, you know, they're giving out these awards for being a great Habanos shop. Then you get the award to become a specialty Habanos shop. So what? You're not making any extra money because of it. Then they say, okay, how do we get... But the thing is, they want these guys to shape up because they want to boost the image of Habanos around the world. So they say, you know what, here's what we're going to do. If you're a Habanos Specialty Shop, we're going to allow you to carry some special items available nowhere else. Some expensive items at that. This jar is selling on most sites for about $1,000. Man, I remember the day when jars were like 300 and change. Of course, I'm hoping they release a series of jars. However, it could be anything. They said the first in a release of special products for Habanos Specialty Shops. and it happens to be this jar. I really hope they stick with a line of jars, Habanos Specialty jars, kind of like they did the Cuban books. But that may not be the case. The following releases could be anything. Maybe the next release will be a humidor, or it could be a crappy travel pouch with 3 cigars in it. It's happened before, if anybody remembers the Travel Retail series. In fact, the coolest item in that series was the Partagas P1 jar, which really didn't belong in the series because a fucking ceramic jar is not exactly a portable item. So I don't know how it ended up in the Travel Retail series. Anyway, this cigar is really getting tasty. Anyway, that's it. But I do want to go over a little something that is based on the statement that we opened with. Say goodnight, Max.